Hi guys, welcome to Family Create. Hope you're all doing well. So today we've got some great battery saving tips for the Galaxy Watch 6 Classic. So let's check it out.
I have the 47mm version here, which is the bigger one with the bigger battery. At the same time, because it's bigger, it does take more battery as well. So these will be some tips that you could apply and get decent battery life, I'd say. I'm currently getting, let's quickly show you. To be honest, I'm quite pleased with my battery life at the moment. I have 13.5 hours left, 28% of the battery left to end. Look, I've used for 1 day and 19 hours, and I've used it a fair bit. Some WhatsApp, off, have had the always on display on for a bit. Now I have it on as well on maximum brightness, so that'll drain the battery a bit quickly. But generally just, yeah, some list of apps, stuff that I've used. So I am definitely getting just around 2 days, mixture of different settings, like sometimes always on display off, sometimes on certain times of the day, so it's not like on all the time or off. I have tried having it on all the time, and I have achieved, I would say the more realistic 1.5 day was 1.5 days with always on display. But so here are some tips that will help. So these are my settings. You know, yours may be different, your needs may be more different. I mean, I'm not going to suggest, you know, you turn off all the features and, you know, just leave it like a dead watch on your wrist. I don't see the point. It's a smartwatch you buy, you want to use it, you want to have lots of the features enabled, and this is what I do. I do turn off what I don't really absolutely need, but there are things I'm just not going to turn off for the sake of turning off every feature to save battery. There's no point of having the watch. So anyway, let's start. So this one is about clearing your memory as often as you can. And again, probably better ways of saving the battery or increasing the battery life on the Watch 6 Classic. So for this, what you have to do is you have to go into your settings, and then you go to battery and device care. Here you can see things like how much battery you have and stuff. So you just go to the bottom one, memory. You tap there. Before you tap there, you can see it shows you how much memory is being used, how much you have available and all that. So you tap on there, it's going to check your memory. You have all these apps sort of running in the back, and they're taking space. So obviously, you know, a lot of them you don't really need to have them running. You can just clear, and if you clear the memory, it'll show you how much memory is going to free up. So you can also see on the top, I currently have 602 megabyte available. I'm just going to clear this now. So it's just cleaning it all up. So it's freed up 293 megabyte from the memory, and I now have 626 megabyte available. And then if you look again, some of them are back again. So some of them are back because they're running they're part of the systems app. So you can clear them, try and clear them again, see if it makes any difference. Slightly, 656 megabyte now available. But basically what that's doing is it's just keeping the memory fresh. So you know, you cleared the RAM basically, and you haven't got so much that's unnecessarily running. So what I normally do is, I don't do this all throughout the day, but just do it maybe few times a day. I just go there and I just clear the memory up, and it just helps the watch run smoothly as well. The other place to check is obviously just to make sure here, if you've got apps running, just close all. And then you can just check again. It says I've got 3 apps in the background. I can see if I can close them. Can't stop this app from running because it's Samsung Health. This one I can close. I'm going to close it. 2 running. And I think it's the wearable one. I'm going to close this one as well if it allows me. Yep. So now I just have 1 running. So the less things you have running in the back, the more efficiently the watch will run. The less work on the processor means more battery that you have. So yeah, definitely it's a really good one, this one, clearing up the background memory. I'll come back to the Google Assistant later. And by the way, this method will work for all of the Galaxy Watches, not just here, but for the smaller version of this, the other Watch 6s, and going back to the older ones as well, they'll all work. So the next one I would say is dark watch faces. And now dark watch faces are really good for battery life. So what it's doing is it's only using the space of anything that's lit. So any of those white, areas, or anything else that's not black. These are the only pixels that are currently active. So, and in return it saves the battery. If, for example, if you had, like, say if you used a different color watch face, I'm just gonna get one. Let's get a white one, just to give you an example. So if I was to use this watch face, the whole screen is now lit, so all the pixels are now working. Obviously, as you can imagine, that will also have an impact on battery life because more of the screen is on. Whereas if you turn it to a black face, less of your screen is currently on, and it does help. I would watch with the darker face, not necessarily black, but black I think is the best because then the pixels are dead. So I tend to always use a dark watch face. Plus I also like the appearance of a dark watch face. So that's that, but that doesn't mean you can't use any other colors. But just if you're conscious of battery life, that's one thing you can do. The next one I'd say is related to the watch face again. This one is about complications. So how many complications do you really need to have on your watch? The more complications you have, complications are those things, the more you have, the more battery your watch is likely to use, because each of those complications, they're doing a job. Like, for example, either counting your steps or day. So they're kind of dynamic, and there's a purpose for them. So the more of them means the more the watch has to work, the processor has to work. So, and then in turn it drains the battery. So the less complications you apply, the better. I usually do like complications, I have to say. Like in this case, I have 3 complications on, but they're not really doing much. If you do have a watch face, like say for example live compass, that's a live one that's always active. It's live, it's moving around with all your movements. That you can imagine it's going to drain the battery. So bear in mind, try and use less complications if you can. Obviously that does depend on the watch face. Some watch faces have lots of complications. In some cases you can sort of pick how many complications you want to see. Like some have nothing. So for example, this one has no complications. It's got the date, but it's not a complication that you can change. Some of the Samsung's built-in ones, for example, this one here, this one's got plenty of complications. It's got, for me at the moment, it's got the battery, it's got the water counter, call, heart, you got your activity. So there's quite a few complications running. There's 5 or 6 complications running here, but yeah, just something to be mindful of. The less complications, the better. The next one after that would be, when you go to sleep, you should set your watch to airplane mode. That does really help with the battery. So imagine if you don't, and your watch is sort of, it's on your wrist because it's doing the sleep tracking, but it's also receiving any messages and anything else that's coming through, and that is a distraction you also don't need at night when you're sleeping. And also you don't need your watch to receive notifications or any other alerts at that time of the night. So turn this off, and it basically shuts all of that down. It lets the sleep tracking is not affected. You can continue to do sleep tracking as normal, but it does save the battery. So for example, this is how you do it. For that, all you do is you swipe from the top, you bring this screen, and then as you scroll, you can see it's the second one here, it's the airplane one. So I just apply this on, and it's gone onto flight mode now, and you can see the indicators, flight mode, airplane indicator. So now, even if I were to get a call now, the watch won't receive it. It won't, yeah, as you can hear that sound, it's off now. It's basically like if your watch was away from your phone, and it cuts off. That's what it's kind of doing, but it's shutting off any signal, so your watch isn't receiving anything. During the night, it does make a big difference, because again, you don't really need that on at night. So that's what I do anyway. I just, every night before I go to sleep, I just usually turn this one off. But I'm going to put it back on now because I am using the watch. The next one you should do, this is not particularly when it's at night, but your mobile data, LTE connection. So do you really need your LTE connection all the time? I haven't done, to be honest, on this much, and I'm still achieving good battery life. My watch is LTE model. When you put your watch on flight mode, it sort of kills off the watch anyway. But during the day, for example, there are times when, if you have your LTE version, your mobile data enabled, it's just unnecessarily eating some data, some battery life, because what it's doing is it's there, and it's constantly, if someone calls, your watch is able to receive that call, even if you have your phone next to it. But I would say your watch is already getting the connection from the phone, so you don't really need this enabled as well. What I would do, I'll just go there, as you can see, mobile data off, and that turns off the LTE mode, and now there's no mobile connection here. So if I was next to my phone, which I am, I'll still get all the information coming through. Any notification, any calls my phone gets, it'll send to my watch as well. So in a way, you're kind of covered. You're in the house or something, or if you have your phone with you. But if you're outside and you don't have your phone with you, or in my case, what I do, when I'm going to work, I just, even though I have my phone with me, I'll just still enable it, because there will be times maybe where I'll leave the phone on the desk and walk away maybe a couple of floors or even outside of the building, and I don't want to constantly have to mess about with this, so I just have it on. But if I'm at home and I know my phone's going to be close to me, I could just turn this off, and I do sometimes. It helps with the battery life, but most of the time, to be honest, I don't. I leave it on. But it's if you're conscious of your battery, it's something to bear in mind. This does help. You can see this always on and full brightness, what it's doing to my battery life now. Anyway, the next item was, so this is about screen brightness. Now that does actually make a big difference to your battery. Is how bright is your screen? Do you have to, yes, it looks great, like having it on maximum brightness. Maybe if you're out and about and it's a dry, very sunny day, and I guess I can understand you switching it on to turning it on to full brightness, because you get better visibility. But in my regular use case, what I do, I usually turn it to, I know it's going to look very dark here, I leave it about there, so around 25% brightness, and it looks dark, but I kind of got used to it. And especially if I'm indoors, that's fine, because I can see exactly what's going on here, and I leave it around 25%, and it does really help with the battery. I think one thing does make a difference here, because don't forget, this watch has, I think, 2000 nits of brightness, which is very bright. So the screen is very bright anyway, and it's very clear and crisp. So even with the screen not so bright, everything still is very readable. It looks great. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to leave it here. I'm not even going to full brightness. I'll leave it here. I think that's still good enough. So the next item is the always on display. I know a lot of people love leaving the always on display on, and why not? Look at that. Always on display looks amazing, especially on such a classic watch. Even when the screen goes down, as you can probably still, it doesn't look great here, but I can see the watch face perfectly. The always on display, it's really nice to have. It's a great feature to have. The advantage is, yes, you have a watch that actually looks like watch all the time, so you don't have a big circled black screen on your hand, which I see on a lot of wrists. Really annoys me. At the same time, that comes at a cost, because it does hit the battery life quite a lot. So if you really want to push to 2.5 days on this watch, you'd be turning your always on display off here. So that's always on display off, and now the watch will go to sleep after a while, and then the dark screen will sort of come, and then you have a couple of options of how you wake the screen. So that's another one I want to cover. In relation to the always on display, you should consider how the watch face is turned on. So like for example, now mine's gone off, and you have option of turn your wrist and the watch face comes on, or you have option of rotating the bezel, or you have the option of tapping on the screen. Now if you have the option of wrist to wake, like see mine isn't because it's not the option I've selected. Now imagine if you have the always on display off and then you've selected wrist to wake. If you're sleeping or unnecessarily, or if you're sort of, if you're getting on with your business, and then you're just waving your hands around, the watch is thinking, you're turning your wrist to look at the time, and it's turning the display on, and each time the display comes on, it's impacting the battery life. What I tend to do in this case is if I have the always on display off, I will go and under display, I just usually set mine to turn bezel to wake. So I usually select this option. So for example, I don't like tapping the screen because I'm going to get fingerprints on it. So if my watch was sleeping, I just rotate and the watch will wake up. It's because it's really handy and easy to do. You're not touching the screen, you're not having to press anything, it's a very natural thing to do. The next item here was one you just saw how I do. So, and this is quite useful for battery life as well. It's this one here, screen timeout. Now if you leave it on a minute, you're just gonna unnecessarily waste battery life by having your screen on, because even if it's sort of on for 15 seconds and it goes off, you can quite easily just touch the bezel or however you set your screen wake method up to wake the screen. But if you leave it 1 minute, it's just constantly on for 1 whole minute, drains battery. 30 seconds still is draining. It does impact on battery. 15 seconds, very quick. I usually set it on 15 seconds and it helps with my battery life. The next one is also here, adaptive brightness. I always leave mine off because I've noticed if you leave it on and suddenly I'm looking at the watch and the screen is really bright, because for example if you're in a darker environment in the house or something like that, not very well lit, the watch thinks it needs to really sort of put full brightness, or even some other times I've noticed unnecessarily the watch is on full brightness, and other times when I've suddenly sort of wanted to look at the time or have a look at my watch and it's really dark and it's like really annoying. It's never the situation that I want, so I usually turn it off, because again the watch is deciding that for you. It's gonna unnecessarily either have it on higher brightness when you don't probably need it, or it's gonna set it to lower brightness when you want it on higher, and vice versa. So I just leave it off and I don't let it decide how to use the battery, or make use of the battery life. I'll decide it myself, so I leave that one off. So that's that. The next few things I have done on my particular setting is, let's go and have a look. So it's to do with your health sensors, and like I said, I'm not one to switch everything off, so I don't turn everything off, but what I have done, so if I go into health, I have set my heart rate to every 10 minutes while still. So I've not, and previously it was set, you have the option of continuous measurements, or you have manually only, and then you have the every 10 minutes while still. Manually means you have to really manually go do a heart measure check, and every 10 minutes I think, to be honest, initially I had it set on the continuous measure for a while, because I was used to that from the Pixel watch, and also then I applied the same setting on the Watch 5 Pro, Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, and then Ticwatch. So I thought I'm just going to use it like that. But now I'm just thinking, I don't really need it to, do my heart measurement every non-stop. And also because it's using the battery every time he's trying to running another heart rate checking. So set it to 10 minutes, and it works perfectly fine for the battery. And again, this is another measure I've applied, and I'm seeing some benefits of that. If you really need to have your heart measurement on continuously, do so. It's not going to drain a huge amount of battery, but every little counts. So I just turn it on to every 10 minutes while still. What I have noticed as well, if I'm exercising and I have this set on every 10 minutes, it still continuously measures my heart rate during exercise. So it's not like, oh, I've done 10 minutes of exercise and only done one reading. No, it does keep up with measuring. So just bear that in mind so you don't lose that information. Next one, stress measuring. Again, I just leave mine on manual. I don't really need the watch continuously measuring my stress. If I need to, I can set it. But again, if I need to really know what my stress levels are, I will go and do a manual check, and it's fine. Otherwise, it's running in the back all the time. It's just because it's measuring your stress. So you can imagine if it's running always in the back, it's bound to have an effect on the battery. So unless you really need that, I have to leave it on manually, which is what I do. This is my setting. And next thing, blood oxygen during sleep. So I leave mine on. Again, if you don't want the watch measuring your blood oxygen during sleep, you can turn that off. It will help with some battery life. But I leave it on, just for getting a more comprehensive sleep tracking data. But one thing I do not do is I never turn on the snore detection. I always leave that off. If you do turn it on, it's going to definitely impact battery life, because you can imagine you're sleeping, your watch is listening out for that, and it's trying to record it. If it's recording your snoring, that's obviously draining battery. And the other thing here finally is skin temperature during sleep. I leave mine on, but if you want to save battery, just turn that off. Again, this is during sleep, and it gives you a kind of a data when you're looking at your sleep data. To be honest, I don't know how useful that is. So skin temperature, if it again is on, it's constantly trying to look for that information, and it's gathering the data. The sensors are running, so you stretch of 7-8 hours of sleep, it's bound to have some impact on the battery. But you can turn it off. I've left it on, so the battery life I showed earlier, I'm achieving with that on, as well as heart rate set to 10 minutes and oxygen on during sleep. So these are my settings, and I leave all my activity detections on, so watch can pick up if I'm doing an exercise or anything like that by itself. Okay, if you like to use Google Assistant, then it's very important to set it up so it doesn't drain your battery as much as it otherwise would. So there's two different things for Google Assistant. I'll just quickly cover these here. So I have my Google Assistant set to this button here. So if I press down and hold, I'll get the Google Assistant coming up. So what that does is it kind of keeps Google Assistant sleeping and only wakes up when you purposely enable it by pressing this button. Now the other thing is, in order to save battery life and use Google Assistant at the same time, it's best to go into Google. Then you see here Google Assistant and then accounts. Go to Assistant, and see here you have the option of talk to Assistant. So say, hey Google, or you have the option of press and hold. So if you enable hey Google, it means Google Assistant is always running in the back and listening to your voice, and it's kind of on a standby basically. Whenever you call it, whenever you say the word hey Google, it'll activate Google Assistant, ask you for a command. And that's, as you can imagine, if it's constantly running, constantly listening, that's going to obviously have an impact on battery life. And I've seen Google Assistant to be draining a lot of battery. So best thing to do is this option here, press and hold, and just enable that. And then, as you can see, it says to use, you may need to assign a button to the assistant. So obviously in my case, I have this button is assigned. So if I just hold it, Google Assistant is here. And one other thing quickly on Google Assistant while we were there. So you can see at the bottom, you can turn off the assistant altogether. So if you turn it off, Google Assistant will no longer be running in the background or listening to your voice, or even working even if you activate it. But obviously Google Assistant is much more useful than having Bixby running in the back. So best probably is to use Google Assistant. So turn on Google Assistant here, or turn it off if you don't need it. If you don't need it, why do you want to waste battery life on it, but I leave it because I use it sometimes. Useful for quick calls, messages, stuff like that. So that's a really good one where you can save a lot of battery if you activate it in the right way, depending on your needs. So those were my tips for saving some battery life on my Galaxy Watch 6 Classic 47mm version, LTE model as well. So that's likely to always drain extra battery because of the LTE mobile data. But I have shown you a number of tips here that I am using, I'm applying, and it's giving me over 2 days of battery life. When this watch was rumored to be coming out and leaks were coming out and the battery capacity was sort of talked about, one of my biggest worries was, how is this watch going to cope with my kind of use of battery life? Coming from mostly Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, I had 3 days battery life, even more. Didn't have to worry about battery life. And then I was thinking, oh no, here's going to be the problem. It's going to be back to Pixel days again. But I was hopeful of being able to achieve 2 days, and I was thinking that will do me fine if I can do 2 days. And as things stand, I'm glad to say I am getting 2 days, and with most of my features on, like the stuff I've already covered. Obviously the battery drain is draining faster now because I have the always on display on, I have the brightness to full, but as you can see here, it's done 1 day, 20 hours, and I've kind of used the watch for my everyday use, and I've done sleep tracking with it, so it's done two sleep tracking now since the last full charge, and again I could have done another sleep tracking again, because during my sleep tracking the battery drainage is not very much, to be honest, maybe 7%, something like that. So I can wake up from 100% to 93% battery when I wake up. So I'm really pleased. I mean, 2 days, just over 2 days, I think it's enough, and if I needed to, I can quickly put it on charge and at least get some 20-minute, half an hour charge, and it's going to give me enough. So it's not like I'm having to worry about, oh, I have to constantly put the watch on charge. And so I'm really pleased about that, and I wanted to share these tips to help if you are struggling with your watch battery life. It's useful to know what other people have their settings as. So if you have any tips that I haven't covered, or you do something on your watch that makes you save even more battery life, please feel free to share, drop a comment and let us know how you set your watch up and what your use cases are. It'd be really interesting to know. I'm sure there's things I can learn from you guys out there as to maximizing or getting even more out of my watch than I am getting at the moment.
So that's all for today, guys. We hope you found the video useful. If you have, please do give it a like, which would help us out a lot. And a subscription would be much appreciated, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.